Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I was going to go over land development today. I was kind of intermixing this, and I was going between like duplex building or home building and land development, but I'm just going to focus on land development. And you know, if you guys like me, I'm going to come back and be able to do a class on building or taking it from after land development to building or something. So I'd be happy to do that as well. But, I have been in real estate for 20 years. In June, I started in June of 2023, and I think where I get, I started in June of 2003. So now, in June of 2023, I'll be in the game for 20 years. So, my background was with Greenstone Homes, and so I feel like they kind of helped pave the path of what I really, really love to do now, which is I like vision, and I like developing land. I like seeing change, and I like building duplexes, single-family houses, condos, whatever I can build. I would do. So, anyways, I probably developed like around 200 lots and units. Some of those lots or houses, depending upon the time of the year, and I would sell the houses, or I'd sell the lots, or I'd keep everything. And what I'm really trying to focus on now is just keeping everything, because I've been taught just to keep everything, hold on to every project or product that I can. But sometimes you're going to have to, get money for the next project, or move money around or whatever. So I'm currently selling, 10 houses that I'm building right now. So, and I was also going to say, as we move along, I'm open. So ask any questions you want. I don't have to wait for questions or anything. So, I should pass these guys. Yep.
Didn't you work security? At,
I did at the Gorge.
It wasn't in your.
The Gorge?
Yeah. So that was before Greenstone. That helped.
That helped pave the path.
Pave the path. Yeah. Central Business.
Toughness.
And I could have followed up a couple of the folks that used to live on my last lot there too.
And in your house.
And in my house. I live in the house too. So, you're right. I should have gone more in depth in my into my
Are your fluids low?
So what is raw land development? I just found a quote or definition. It's the process of turning an undeveloped piece of property into something valuable and habitable by building on it. And by building on it, I guess I'm just saying bringing all the infrastructure in. So, number one, I've done it a couple different ways. One, I'll just go find a vacant piece of land, or land with a house on it. If you can find a land with a house on it, I think you're that much further ahead in terms of like your end profit, I guess I would say. So if you can find that, that's great. More often than not, you're going to have to bring in utilities, which is water, sewer, gas, power, cable, and phone. I drive by all the properties before I go and make an offer on them. Or in the meantime, I kind of feel out what's there. You can see one of the yellow hoses coming out of the ground is gas, so I know it's nearby. Power is super easy to see. All you got to do is look from the sky or look for a power box nearby. Cable, it's always a good idea to call the local cable provider, and same with phone. So even though that's kind of, I'm learning on the project that I'm doing now, that there was never cable and there was never phone there. So we're having to like retrofit that in, and I'm having to wait an extra month, and I can't get my place rented out now because I don't have those services. So we'll have them at the end of this month. So in terms of Idaho versus Washington, I'm open to any questions on there. I'll kind of bounce back and forth, but if you took Kootenai County and Spokane County, they're really similar in terms of a short plat and a long plat. So in Spokane County, 9 lots or less is considered a short plat. And anything above that is considered a long plat. The difference is timing, really. That's all the difference is, because you're bringing utilities in to either all the lots in yours. So it's a timing thing. And in terms of timing, these short plat and long plats are taking, depending upon the time of the year when you get them, I mean, they can take anywhere from 6 months to probably a year and a half from start to finish. So I think a lot of the city and the county, a lot of those guys are lacking current workers and stuff, employees, and so everything is taking a long time. So I guess if you were to go off and do this, just be patient with the process.
Thank you. Thank you.
The first, that was a Kyler special.
I love it. It's my personal favorite photo.
That's on some of my business cards.
Well,
The first ever development that we did, I actually did it with Joel back in 2008. It was on the corner of 24th and Adams, which is right across the street from Sunrise Elementary, which is where we went to elementary school. I'm a weirdo. I name all my developments. This one wasn't that creative. We just called it the Adams Project because it was on Adams. But other ones, I'll get more creative, more fun, to do logos and stuff like that. I just like to keep that fun. So that was the first ever development we did in 08. What we did was we took this, the mouse work on there. So we took this at one point, these 4 lots right here, basically were one parcel, okay? So we split them into, our goal is to split them into 4 lots. This house right here was always there. In fact, the gal who bought it back in 08, Kristen, she still lives there. So we built, or we basically chunked this off into 4 different lots. And we sold the house and lot as is, and then we sold these other 3 lots to actually Todd Spencer. You remember selling this to?
Yeah.
55 grand a piece. You sold, I think, these 2 lots right up here. So Todd was back with Berkshire Hathaway. I looked that up this morning.
May have been, yeah.
So, anyways, I'll go into kind of the first ever development that Joel and I did together. We bought it looks like for, so we bought the house and the land together, which again is always seems to be the best way, unless the house is a tear down. It always seems like the best way because you have added in value already with the house there. If you just wanted to spin the house, and it's easier to get financing on a house too. So we bought the land and house for 215 grand. And then I was looking back this morning and I went up and added up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 10 total costs into this project to bring us up to 28 grand. The development cost back in 08 was 28 grand to do 1 acre. And I think if you ask Ty now, maybe that has doubled in a half. So if that same piece of property, if you wanted to develop that piece of property, probably is, I'd say upwards of 250 grand. But they also are requiring you now to bring in sidewalks and more asphalt and all the utilities, which I don't even think we had to bring the utilities into this property. But it's just, there's a lot more involvement now with the city and county and everybody. So we ended up being into this whole project. These are ballparks, about 243 grand, 700. Okay, we sold the house ballparky for 142 grand. So now we were into, and this is how I do all of my, this is how I analyze all my deals, and I'll do it up on the board later too. But we were into basically 3 lots remaining for 101 grand. So let's say 101 grand divided by 3 lots is probably 33, 34 grand, something like that. So we were into each lot for 33 to 34 grand. Now, this was just as in 08 as the market was kind of shifting. So I remember we were having to really grind to get rid of these lots. And Todd had the buyers for these lots at 55 grand. Those lots today are probably worth 130 to 150, if not maybe a little bit more. You might be able to get 160 on those lots today. So it's just crazy how the times have changed in 14 years, but that's with everything. So end of the day, we ended up selling 3 of these lots. Each lot owner had their own separate builder that built houses. I think maybe 1 or 2 of them built spec homes there. At the end of the day, we made about 53 grand on it, which was good for the time, and it was a great learning experience. So, but that's how some of these can work out. That's the basic math nowadays. the math is way more. It's crazy, the math that what you have to figure. I mean, this 11 item list is probably like 30 or 40 items now. So, so I'll go into our second development that we did, which I just put up front. We bought this, I think, in about 07 or 08, so right at the wrong timing. It can be risky, I'll tell you that. Not all projects are profitable, and this one wasn't a profitable one. But had we probably held on to this one for 10 years, it would have been profitable. But developers like to, buy, build, develop, bring all the infrastructure in, and sell and move on. So did the pros outweigh the cons? They did not on this one. We bought this house, and we should have. I think we paid like $225 or something for it. And this house, we should have just torn it down. It was horrible. We had horrible tenants. The whole process was a rough like that. So it was a bad market. We continued to build and develop this piece of property through the bad market, and we didn't end up selling it for 5 years later. And we ended up, I don't know, it was like breaking even or losing money on it. So it can be it can be risky, I guess is what I'm saying. So
Tell them why not to do it. Subordinate.
yes.
We went
So
into-
okay, so subordination is a whole other. Basically, subordination is when. I don't think I have a picture, but here I'll do it. So this was the shape of that lot, right? And this was the house that the one I just showed you. This was lot 1, 2. So we had 2, 3, and 4. So I think we sold this one to Diamond Rock Construction. And again, we probably sold them for 58 or 55 or whatever, 60, something like that. And this one, we did what's called a subordination, where we basically, we gave up the land to the builder. We just let him have it and said, when you're done, we'll make a commission off it. That's all we did, right? We gave up the land, so that was collateral for the bank to.
So yeah, the bank wouldn't give him the construction loan unless we moved into second position, which we felt like was solid.
We were in second position. It ended up taking Shane, I think, probably about 1.5 years to build this house. So we're just sitting on this property for 1.5 years. Like, where's our money? Him and I were having to go in and I think clean up and stuff like that. So sometimes things like that happen. You just got to get back and grind and go do just take care of the problem. And so we took care of the problem. We had we had a homeless guy living in this place at the time. And then we also
Olaf?
Olaf Thunderfoot.
I served Olaf.
Thank you. Thank
And I almost got needled.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah,
You were with me.
I was with you. So, anyways, that's what subordination is. I'll never do it again. It's not
That's
worth
what he
it.
went by.
But this one ended up being a project that we'll call a break even or maybe a loss even, maybe a $10,000 loss.
Learning point.
It's a learning point. So
I mean, why? Why? I mean, you say that. What? I mean, granted, bad market, bad time, bad tenants,
Yep.
subordination. I mean, is that like just all factors that compound, or did you buy too high? Was it like were the lots not valued? Like when you say, why that one?
we bought too high looking back with a piece of garbage house. Had that house been, I think we put probably 60, 70, 80 grand into this house. We should have just scraped it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was rough. So we bought the wrong house. I mean, it was so unlevel. There was different levels within a rancher. It was bad. So,
And I had, my takeaway was too, I'm right, same thing he's saying, but it made me, on future stuff, and he and I have talked about it, like you want a decent solid house. So if it feels like a piece of junk and it was just weird that way, we said like, this was the kind of guy that would, and just his style was like, he would go and duct tape something and it was like, everything was Mickey Mouse. And so then once you start unraveling it, it was kind of that way. And a lot of that I think was just market conditions. I mean, we walked into the Great Recession, but we were in and we lowered the price like $30,000 because we were ready to walk, because it was just like, this is hairy enough. And they took the deal. They hated us for it, but they took the deal, and it was like you know, they were like, oh, and you said you weren't gonna cut the tree. Like, they would be all over us. I took calls for,
I took a call
honestly,
2 weeks
years.
ago on it.
There you go.
Like, with the current owner.
Yeah.
Like, asking about something that the current owner did, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe just saying, okay, assessing the house and taking a good hard look at it and saying this is either scraping it or we're not going, or if we're going to Band-Aid this thing, like, know what we're getting ourselves into.
Yeah.
Like, and there's gotta be a budget too, which you never follow, because it's like, dude, you think it's gonna cost 30,000 and all of a sudden you're into it 70 grand and it's still a piece of garbage.
And it's usually your biggest asset. Like, Zach's done some bigger projects where it's like, okay, this probably ends up being 15% of it. But in the stuff we've done, like these things, it's like, that house is like 50, 60% of the whole asset.
Right,
So
right.
I think paying attention to that. And on the subordination thing, again, it was just kind of a, hey, we're bank, you know, this should be all fine, you know, it's just trusting the wrong builder. And then we ended up, the wild part of the story where you were there was, he wasn't paying the first mortgage. So we find out right before it's about to go to auction. So then we have to keep our, he owed us $45,000, $50,000, and to keep that from getting wiped away, we had to go in 3 hours, we had to come up with $120,000 sitting at banks in Ellensburg, pretty much panhandling for money.
I was driving back from
You were there.
I was with you.
Oh, yeah, you were with me.
Because we were coming from Seattle, we had to stop in Ellensburg
Because the
and just
hard
come
money-
up with 120
hard money
grand.
loan guy who was loaning them money, we were behind him in second position, so he was just gonna take it back. And we would lose our initial investment.
Yeah, so if it didn't get bid up and it went to auction 123, then we go bye. So that was the big thing, like the stress involved with protecting, and we even had that debate, even on the drive, like, I don't know, is it worth us trying to even put together 120 grand to save our 45, or is this just a sunk cost? And
Another point to that is we ended up having Shane remodel this place and build this place, and you've gotta be really selective upon who you're working with, like, as a builder. You want this guy, you know, I'd never work with him again, nor should anybody ever work with him again. It was just, we learned. I mean, at the end of the day, and that's my whole point to this slide. All off Thunderfoot. And then we actually had him served.
By me.
Oh, by you.
I had to go to do he was in his van.
wasn't it in a street or something?
No, it was in a parking lot.
There we go.
West Valley, like over by West Valley.
Corner him in a
Yeah.
parking lot?
Yeah. In the Honda, man. He didn't see it coming.
Yeah. Honda give and go. I have a question too, that might, how do you like to find the land? Like, when you're out there looking, do you use a lot of different methods, or do you like one specific method to find a candidate for this in the first place?
All of the ones I have done, well, I'm sorry, when I was first doing this, I'd go knock on doors. And like, one of my best ones ever was Base Camp over on Montgomery over there, or Montgomery. I'd look at expired listings, and those ones got me, I would just call directly. And like, I got that one for $330,000 or $390,000. That was the best one ever. And so I'll do drive-bys, I'll knock on doors, I'll call whitepages.com. I mean, I'll grind to figure it out, which I'll talk a little bit more about that, but.
Cool.
So I was gonna give you back to a good example. What costs are there to consider before building? And I wanted to give you a good example.
You want me to help you?
Yeah.
I'll go back.
Close. Desktop. I don't know if it's on my desktop.
Okay, you can do it.
Will this pop up on my desktop? Okay, so I'll just be upfront and honest with the numbers on this one. This one was over on the corner of Progress and 4th in the Spokane Valley. So even backing up. So I got frustrated, annoyed. I said I was never going to develop any properties again because of that loss, right? And then I got a little bit of fire. I found this other piece that I liked. And I went and attacked it, and it was a really good one. It was a creative one. And then, so I guess in 13 or 14 is when I really started investing in developments and getting that going. So I've really been doing it hard for probably about the past 8 years. So, are really putting a lot of focus in it. So, this was one that was a winner. Okay, so all these numbers over here on the left, there's probably, I don't know, 4, 5, there's almost 35 what I'll call line items, right? And in the one that Joel and I did originally, this is the difference of even 5 years. There was probably maybe 10. So there's 20 more line items on this one in just a matter of 5 years. So I go through like, this is, and I'm happy to sit down with anybody individually. I've done it with Michaela a little bit, obviously Ty, and I'm happy to go through. I'm old school. I use Excel spreadsheets and a pencil and a piece of paper when I do these projects. So, but I've worked up a pretty decent little spreadsheet that I like. So, I had bought this piece of property for $197,000. Okay, it looks like I put in, you know, the rest of these numbers are my contractor, Vera Water and Power numbers, paving. There's testing that's involved, like testing the concrete or testing the ground or all sorts of testing, surveying and engineering fees, cost to the city, cost to like a First American title, more city costs, final paving, post-pave. I didn't have to do fencing on that project, or I didn't include it in this portion, but asbestos survey. So this one, I actually found there was a 1909 house on it, and I tore it down. I actually found the owner. He was 90 years old. He actually called me one day, and he was awesome. Like, he was really cool. He was just like, do what you got to do, because some of these sellers get really like, oh, well, I've lived here for 50 years, and you're going to tear my house down. And they aren't happy with the process. So if you can build those relationships, I think it's big. But we had to do an asbestos survey, asbestos remediation, house removal was $5,800, which today that's probably, you know, $10,000–$15,000. There was tree removal. You have to have signage, like street signs now on the roads. I had to do a mailbox. You have to do mailboxes, which are getting crazy expensive these days as well. And then I put an interest in there because it's part of the process. Long story short, my total expenses into that whole project, which was basically a piece of land with a house on it, tore the house down, cleared off the land, brought in water, sewer, power, road, signs, whatever. I was into that whole project for $444,000. And I guess that doesn't include some holding costs, which was insurance, which was an additional $14,000. So let's say I was into this basically $460,000. Well, $460,000 divided by, I have 8 lots in there, so $460,000 divided by 8 is probably, I was into each lot for about $50,000. You know, $55,000, something like that.
Is this your latest one?
No, this is one probably I did in 2017.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
are you financing that, or are you paying like just upfront cash?
So I'll get into the financing a little
Tell us
bit.
how rich you are.
No, not anymore. Yeah. So I'll get into the financing portion of it. But that was an example of a good win. And I ended up building on these ones at a really good price. I mean, I paid for duplexes. I paid like I think I paid $226 per duplex. So that one was a win. Things are changing, but okay. How do I put this back? Oh, there we go. So I just wanted to go over an example of that. Does anybody have any? You know what? Let's go ahead and answer your question, Matthew. Okay, what was your question again?
Like, how do you finance that?
Okay, so
Because if it would take me 100 years to save that much money.
So I will tell you a story that you got to grind and you got to figure it out. Okay, so number one, and I'll put in here, you have to get these relationships with banks now. And the younger you are, I've been telling Andrew and Ty forever, the younger you are, the better. Get them started when you're in your 20s. Like, just go meet with these credit unions and whoever you're banking with. I mean, I really use Mountain West Bank a ton, and I've got great relationships with them. New America, great relationships, and then Washington Trust Bank. I use 3 banks, basically. So, but then I was actually, when I was working, well, actually, I guess I was just, this is probably probably about 9 years ago. I had a listing in Rocky Hill with my sign on it. And this gal calls me and she's like, hey, we want to see this lot. What can we do with this? Blah, 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 whatever. And so, long story, random story, but my dad knew her dad. And so I started talking to the girls who wanted to buy the piece of property, and they're like, we have some money to spend. We have money in a side pot that we would be willing to private finance you on, basically. So where I'm going with this is private financing. So if anybody can ever get a private financing person that they trust and like to work with, snag on to them. And whether that's $200,000 or $20 million, whatever it is, it's a good person to have in your pocket right now. But you have to grind to find them, and sometimes you got to get lucky. But you can find them. There's guys out there right now that are, charging 2 to 4 points up front and 10% or 12%. I don't know how you make it pencil. So you've got to find somebody that's more, if you can go family or somebody that's willing to work with you a little bit and grow with you instead of these guys that are just trying to take all your money, which is what 10% and 2 points is.
Right, we have one hard money one, and it's not fun at all.
It's not fun.
No.
So, anyways. Okay, so I got lucky basically. But I've established this relationship for 8-9 years now.
Yeah.
And now they're my go-tos, right? But I would love to find another private financing person, because that's how you grow and expand.
Yeah.
So, it was random how I found them. But I'd say anybody that can and wants to do any of this, even whether it's buying duplexes or land or apartments or a house or just investment properties, try to find a private financing person. And they're easier to find than you would imagine. If you just think a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you were always big on that. I'm like, we had talks years ago because he had this thing, and I'm like, who do I know that's got like a couple $1 million sitting around? And he's just like has this drive, like more people than you think, And he is right though. You're dealing with an investment client. Hey, I'm looking for investments and that sort of thing, and this is a straightforward investment. It's not just like, hopefully I can find someone that thinks I'm their grandson or granddaughter. It's like, this can make plenty of sense for them. So it's inspiring the way he's like, there are more stones there to look under than you may think. And when we even have some, like if one of you guys, like we know some people that, and a lot of this is depends on the day, the week, I'm not in that mood, or I just did something with it. So there's where you do want to have lined up of, if you have 2 or 3 different options, but I'd start with us asking, and worst we can say is, oh shoot, everybody we know is flush out. But yeah.
If you're looking to the end game, the end project or product or whatever, and you're developing this land, and you're going to have somebody build them, this is something something new I learned within the past 2 years is that, well, go partner with a builder, because a lot of these builders who are building 20 to 40 houses per year, okay, well, I got to deal with you guys, or maybe I get to split these with you. Those guys have cash. A lot of those guys have cash. And a lot of them have, $1 million to probably $5 to $10 million, available. So, or connections, banks, to do the project with you.
Gotcha.
So, again, establishing relationships with banks, though, if you just start doing small things with these guys, before you know it, in 5 years from now, when you want to go do this, or 2 years from now, or 3 years, or whenever, you've got a banker on board with you. So I've had to use bank money for a lot of these.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not this, but maybe it's the build, and so it's just, but you have to work at it.
Yeah.
You got to work at it, so. Okay, so I handed out, so I was just going to go through the process. Everybody does it a little bit different. Everybody does their numbers a little bit different. I just like the way I've done mine, and I've just done it for a long time. So, the process. So, how to find a development piece on the MLS. To property space, to Spokane County, doing measurements, and so you find a lot. You need a space in between and no.
Okay, so sorry.
What do you do? So I'm just going to do a whiteboard example. In this, I ran numbers on this piece of property, which is 18024 East Indiana when it came out. Gail Erling had it listed. And let's see here. So I just wanted to spitball, and I haven't ran these numbers for probably 3 or 4 months, about the process I would go through. and I'm grinding on the internet to try to find these things too, these deals. Like I'm looking every single day at 5 p.m. or whatever to try to find these. And they're tough to find.
Hey, Z, I think you had a question.
Go, fire away. Check.
I just have a question. When you're doing this, like just like the 4 lots you had with the bum that lived in there.
Yep.
So when you do the loan, are you doing a construction loan? What is it if you are going through a bank? Like what is that? How do you start that?
So let's just take that. Let's just take that as a blank example, right? And
Yeah.
starting from fresh.
Yep.
So ideal. Let's say it was nowadays that piece of property is probably 350 or 400 grand probably.
Okay.
I mean, that's actually what I could just take you through right now,
Okay.
too. But remind me to include how I would get the funding for it. But I can do that on this
Okay.
example. So I see this property come up on Indiana. So Indiana's right up here. Okay, there's a house right here. They've got the nice thing about this piece is, I mean, you can go look and see on the photos how nice they kept this. This house was awesome. So, $800,000 is what this went for. So, the first thing I do is I look at an aerial version of this on like a property space or SpokaneCounty.org or whatever. Hey, is there enough room for me to get a road between here and here? And if the answer is yes, we'll move on. So, next thing, zoning. If you look on your paper, this, I've highlighted, I think, or at least on one of them, the zoning is R3 zoning. And I just know this stuff, but again, this is stuff you have to research a little bit or ask me, and I can probably have the answer to you pretty quick. But this zoning is in the Spokane Valley. And again, same as in Coeur d'Alene. I mean, this, like downtown Coeur d'Alene really interests me. And they have like this little pocket housing and all this stuff. So, but in general zoning, this is probably really similar to like Post Falls or like a Coeur d'Alene place or something, whatever the zoning is that they call it out there. But this is R3 zoning. And I know in R3 zoning that the lots need to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet. They've got to be a minimum, there's no width, minimum width anymore, but you probably need at least 30 or at least 40 feet really to do a normal house. Backyard setbacks are 20, side yard setbacks are 5. So I'm going through all that stuff in my mind. And on paper, I write this down like I'm doing right now. So, so I know this whole piece is $800,000. I check the zoning. I know, okay, it's 2.76 acres and 2.76 times. I know that you can do
8.
8. Are you sure it's not 10? It's
Well,
10.
R3 is.
R3.
Oh, sorry, R3. Okay, so I know that within R3 zoning, you can do 8 units per acre. So 2.76 times 8 is probably like 17 or 18, right?
And is that your first equation you're doing to see what the total density is,
Definitely,
right?
yep. Then I got to reel it in a little bit. Yes, but yeah. So I know that I could get 22 units technically in here. Okay, but if I'm looking at this piece of property, I know that there's not enough room to do. I know that I can't get a road down the middle and do houses on both sides just because of measurements. And I got a link. I've got links for measurements, or the Spokane County, and I'll go into that a little bit later as well. But so technically, am I feeling great? Hey, well, this house is 800 grand. How many units can I get on there? 22, kind of, not yet. But that's the first thing I'll do. Second thing I'll do is go, okay, well, if I were to chunk this house off, what's this house worth? Anybody got a, is it up down there? Oh, the picture is. It's as nice as it is, as nice on the inside as it is on the outside.
How about $395?
$395. So we think that after viewing the house, it's worth $395.
What do you think, Andrew?
Say 4 for easy numbers. So okay,
I said 402.
500, 402.
That house probably would sell pretty quick, probably for $400.
Yeah.
Yours is plain pink.
I'm not going to take out commissions. That's something you want to take into consideration. But for even numbers, you of course, if you sell this house as a seller for 400 grand, you know that it's going to cost you probably about 27 grand. So I guess let's just do it. Let's take out the 9%, which 9% is 3%. to the list side, 3% to the buy side, and 3% for closing. We'll just do that for you. So that's 36 grand. So now we're at a net of 364. 364. Okay. So that is actually a pretty big number, right? That you should take into account. I do, but I was not going to do it until I got talked into it. So anyways, now I know at 800 grand minus 364, okay? What I'm trying to do now is figure out my lot, the value of these lots. So the value of these lots is, what's it?
436.
436, okay. I'm into the raw dirt, which is all this, for 436 grand. Now's where it gets a little tricky. Maybe this wasn't the best example, but it's actually kind of fun. So realistically, I think I figured, well, I'm just going to say that you can get 10 houses back here, right? Because that's all that the road will allow. They will make you do a hammerhead somewhere in here for fire access. So I got my road in here. And I'm going to say that these guys are only going to let me do 10 units. Or it could even, 10 total units. So we're keeping it under a, under still a short plat. So whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Okay, that includes the existing house. So I'm getting 9 units. I'm staying within the short plat, within the short plat guidelines for the city of Spokane Valley. So what would I do next to find out I guess I gotta go. What would I do next to find out the undeveloped cost per undeveloped piece of property?
436 divided by the 9 lots?
Yep. Okay, what's that number?
40,444.
40,444. 48,000? Okay. And again, these are all just examples. This was a really good buy for anybody, by the way, that had it.
Andrew, I don't know if your calculator is a Canadian one.
Are you doing 9 or 10?
364,000 divided by 9 says 40,444. We can have a basic calculator class.
436 divided by 9?
Oh, I did 360.
Oh my god. You want to still do the basic calculator?
Yes, I am the calculator
Is
class.
Is that a shot?
Is it the north side or the south side?
Yeah.
Okay, and again, this is just hypothetical. This isn't the real deal. This one, you probably could have gotten a lot more creative on this one. In terms of probably more lots, maybe a hammerhead and there's a house here and there's a house here. So maybe you could have gotten 12 thought. Maybe, did you ever look at this one?
No, I don't think it.
Okay.
I think he kept that on purpose.
Gail, it was Gail Erling. Okay, you're into an undeveloped lot for 48 grand, which is probably high, a little bit. I think, these days it's probably nice to be into an undeveloped land for anywhere under 35 grand is pretty good these days. And then let's just say we got the developer, let's just say the contractor in there, right, who's going to do the work on this place. Okay, and he's going to charge us whatever, probably let's say 30 grand per times 9. Let's say 30 grand times 10, okay?
300,000, Andrew.
Are you sure?
No?
So I'm just saying that the cost to develop a flat Spokane Valley lot, or probably most lots, which are probably most lots in the valley that you could actually find and develop, you're probably between 30 and 40 grand to develop these lots. So,
Per lot.
per lot. So this project is going to cost you $300,000 to develop, okay? So now we are, what's 300,000 divided by 10, oh, it's 30K. So basically we take this number, the 30,000 plus the 48,000, so we are into each lot developed for 78 grand. Got it? Any questions? So now what you need to figure is lot 1 through 9, depends upon, I guess, what you wanted to do with this lot. If you're at 78 grand per lot, are you somebody who's going to develop and flip these lots? Because what are these lots worth? Well, let's say they're worth 125 grand, which these probably are. So maybe there's a $40,000 to $50,000 profit times 9 lots. You know, you made 300-400 grand on this project. Less taxes, is it worth doing? We could get into that debate on or conversation, you know, on probably the build one. But I have moved towards trying to not sell anything because that's what I've always been told to do. But there's cases, maybe you want to take this, maybe you want to 1031 it, which I'm just learning about now, and take this whole project and say you sell this all to one builder for 78 grand times 9. You want to take all that money and move it into an apartment complex or 3 duplexes or whatever, something that's more cash flowing than just land. And that's maybe a way to go. But in general, at 78 grand a lot, Coeur d'Alene, that's probably a great deal, right? I mean, because those lots in Coeur d'Alene are probably worth 150, 200 grand. So yeah, maybe we just do sell that project. Or what I do is take that and then I go into the build. And then I figure out the cost to build like a single family or duplex or whatever it might be. So that's the basics of how I get to my numbers. And again, I got crazy spreadsheets I'm happy to go over to anybody with. Because this number right here includes a lot of stuff. This $300,000 includes your engineering, your testing, your any fees you can possibly imagine. Cable, internet, sewer, water, road, dirt work, ponds, swales, everything. Mailbox, tree removal. And that number's probably low. I just wanted to use that because.
Are you typically getting different financing for the land and the development, or is that all pre-done up front with the same lender?
My goal is to have it all done with the same lender. But I mean, even if that's a Mountain West Bank, and Mountain West Bank loans you your 800 grand plus say they loan you your $1.1 million to do the whole project. If you could stick with the same person the whole time, it's so much easier. Especially when you go to plat these, do go to your final plat, which is basically saying that this becomes legal lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can't sell this house, by the way, until you have a recorded plat, which is another big consideration. It's not like you're buying this for 800 and flipping this thing right away for 400, which would be great, but you can't do that until the whole plat is recorded, which again can take anywhere from probably 8 months on the low side to more like a year and a half.
You rent out those houses though to cover your,
During the time frame.
yeah,
Great house. Yeah.
carrying costs?
In even on like this project.
Proudly managed by Red Rock Property Management.
Good pitch. Yes.
Great sponsor.
That's a great point though, because that'll
It's a great
help,
point.
you know, like this
Thank you.
house you could probably get $2,500 for.
I'm still trying to collect from Chad,
Oh, Flora.
Flora.
Yeah, we haven't called him lately. We should give him a call.
I do, let's see your,
The grow.
yeah.
First open house.
We have his remotes to the heats.
So like, okay,
Do you ever have like planning and zoning come back to you and go, yeah, well, you can't do that, or I mean, how sure? Well, you know those public notices where what if a neighbor comes out and is like, oh, we're gonna band together, we're gonna stop this son of a bitch.
we'll get into this with Ty's situation.
Okay, so I mean, that can just derail you. Now you've plunked down 800,000 and you've got to.
I should back up because what I'll do when I go make an offer, let's say I made an offer on that property, make an offer on it, contingent upon feasibility. And you got to feel out each seller, right? Like, I don't know if the seller's going to give me 2 days or 200 days to do my feasibility. So if you can get at least 3 weeks or 4 weeks of feasibility, it should keep you pretty safe. But like we're going to talk about one of Ty's situations, you're gambling on all this stuff regardless. Like you're always gambling on it. But yeah.
Laura has a question.
Right.
Hey, is time of year matter for like all of these things that you have to get done? Like, so if you buy it in the beginning of the winter, does that then you have to hold on to it for longer while you wait for all this to get done? Does that ever change your calculations, or is it just
no, it never changes my calculations. What I prefer the best time I would think is to buy is probably like October, November, December. If you can get properties during those months, I think that's the best one to buy. Because then you can work on the paperwork portion, which is the short plating process with Kootenai County, with the city of Coeur d'Alene, with Spokane County, with the city of the Spokane Valley, whoever. And by the way, all this stuff is like the same across every state. I mean, in every county, there's always, they have their rules, but it's all pretty close to the same until you start getting into the city. So I think if you can buy and close on the property October, November, December, do your paperwork, what I'll call your paperwork, which is like a submittal for the short plat or submittal for the long plat, all that stuff. If you can do all that over the winter time and hopefully break ground March, April, May 1st, develop the property for 3 to 6 months, it's done in November, maybe you can hopefully start, that's a year, that's a pretty quick process, but it can be done if you're on it. You just have to have everything lined up. So, but then you can maybe start building your duplexes or your single family or whatever you want to build in that November, and then have them ready for the following summer of whatever year. So I would say buying in the winter is the best to do the paperwork. Did I answer your question, Jimmy?
Yep, thank you.
And I know we'll get into a little bit more, like one of Ty's scenarios.
How do you determine what to build? Whether it's
That's a good question.
or a townhome or?
So that, and I can help with anybody on that too. So like an R3 zoning is a pretty normal single family house or duplex. So like the R3 zoning in the city of Spokane Valley, it's a minimum, and that's all in your sheet there. That's a minimum of 5,000 square foot for a lot, okay? So you have to build either a single family house pretty much on that 5,000 square foot lot. Okay, if you wanted to do a duplex, the city of Spokane Valley actually moved their minimum density square footage from 10,000 square feet to 14,500 square feet to try to make people like me quit building duplexes on 10,000 square foot lots, and mainly Dennis Crapo. But, so, does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but there's other zoning. So, no, it doesn't really. I guess so. What do I build there? Well, if the zoning is R4 zoning, the R4 zoning allows for more units per acre. So maybe I do consider a fourplex. Like R3 zoning won't allow you to do a fourplex or a threeplex in R4 zoning. So there's all these different little codes. So the R4 zoning will allow you to do like a fourplex or a threeplex or a duplex or a single family. And the higher the density, the more units you can do basically within a certain lot.
Then each one has its different like value, right? If you're gonna
Yeah.
sell them off like.
So zoning is basically your outline, but how do you individually determine what you want to build in it? As far as like,
Profit.
Sell or hold.
yeah,
Right.
or like,
Yeah. I'll, do I want to sell? Do I want to keep it? Do I want to sell it? The best value is in a duplex.
Okay.
So, I mean, really, but then sometimes I can't do a duplex because it'll only allow me to be on, because I don't have a 14,500 square foot. Honestly, if I could do, let's say those were all, well, I'm just trying to think here. If I could get 10 single family houses in that, or 12 units of duplexes, I'm gaining 2 more units. I'd build the duplexes. So if I could only get 10 units of duplexes versus 8 houses, or sorry, vice versa. If I could get 10 units of houses and only 4 lots for 8 total units of duplexes, I'm going with the single family houses.
okay,
I'm going with whatever is the most dense.
okay.
Would you say the highest and best use of property? Like, I feel like you would, and like, do you look at neighborhood too? Like, what would fit? Like, what's going to?
Yeah,
Am I going to keep it? Am I going to sell it? And what's the highest and best use for this?
That's a good point. So I guess I'm trying to get the best. If like the neighbors are really cool and they're like, God, we just don't want you to do this, or somebody has sold this property to me and they're like, would you just look at this option and it still makes sense, then I'll go with it. So I'm flexible, I guess.
So you go to people with land and you pitch them like you want to develop their land, and how many times do they be like, absolutely not?
Plenty of them. Most of them are really mean.
I mean, I would like,
You'd be mad.
oh yeah.
Yeah, but
So-
you live on acreage.
Yeah.
Just say
But if
no,
you look
Sam.
at-
You don't have to be so mad. It's a simple no.
I mean, I've been hung up on.
Yeah, you don't need to be mean.
Yeah.
But like
Say the
your property, are you on 10 or 20 acres, right?
10.
So you're on 10
Brian,
acres.
let's go get it.
Prime, but
But
your
that's the
zoning-
thing is, I don't think anybody on our street, because we're all 10+ acres. So I
You
think somebody
could,
would throw
the first thing
a fit.
I would do for your piece of property, if it showed up and I thought maybe there's a chance of developing it, I would go look at Property Space or cootiecounty.org or whatever and say, okay, what can I do on this property? And your zoning's probably like R10 or whatever the zoning is, rural 10 or whatever zone. And so I know immediately, I'm not even gonna look at it because her house is the only house that can be on that land and probably forever.
Yeah.
So I'm looking in specific areas, like downtown Coeur d'Alene, Spokane Valley, city of Spokane, certain places. So again, if I saw that one come up, first thing I'm doing, I'm going to Property Space and I'm looking at what's my zoning? Oh, it's R3 zoning. Well, let's see how far, can I fit a road down the west side of this property? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Starts checking boxes, and so you can move forward with the feasibility.
Do you ever like contemplate challenging the zoning or trying to change the zoning? Is that something you?
Yeah, you can. A lot of people do that, but the process is like probably a year. I sold a piece of property to a buddy of mine off of Progress. I think it was Progress or Adams out in the valley last year, and he's got this amazing zoning. I mean, it's R5 right now, which meaning 1 house per 5 acres, but everybody around him is switching it into, R3 or whatever it is. And so I'm like, you just need to start that process. It's going to take a year for you to rezone it. So
It touches it too, doesn't it?
Huh?
His touches.
yeah, his touches it. So he is doing a rezone. He's applying for a rezone. So it would be pretty much the equivalent of R3, but I think it's city or it's
His
Spokane
is
County.
urban reserve.
Urban reserve.
But then
which you
he
can move
touches
into.
R3, so he's got an argument for it.
Yeah, and he'd have a good argument for it.
It just gets risky. I did that with a client but he stays more in the mainstream. Like, they don't typically have he's right. It feels like gambling for him because, there could be something out of left field. We're going to hear Ty's story in a minute, but you're entitled as an owner to the zoning and being able to do whatever you do under the existing zoning. The other, you're asking for permission, and a lot of times it's, technically you have to call them politicians because it's a city councilor or somebody else that's sitting in there. So if then it kind of is like they look out there and go, I'm going to make a lot of people mad and one person happy to approve this.
Yep.
Nope. And now you're stuck with the zoning. And if you bet everything on that, so they become a lot, but those are also probably the bigger wins because you're paying for something that isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
anyway.
the guy who was buying that house, he was buying a single family house he's not
Yeah.
like, I need a house, I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah.
If I can develop this is a double win. 'cause
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
happy
bonus.
with
Sure.
it.
But
Yeah,
he's a surveyor, and so I've been telling him, you're a surveyor, and if you're looking for your retirement, which he is, he's not gonna be in that house forever. Start the process now, because that process is gonna take you a year to get it from rural reserve or whatever it is to R3. So,
So
And
you
you-
try to stay within that like R3, R4.
I do. I mean,
Okay.
I'd take, let's see, what are these? I mean, I'd go R3, R4, MFR in the Spokane Valley.
What
Yes.
does MFR stand for?
Multifamily.
Multifamily, residential,
Okay.
or whatever. That's the highest zoning in the city of Spokane Valley. And again, Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, they all have the same zoning, pretty much the same as this. Coeur d'Alene's cool because you can add on like ADUs and stuff, so they're
Okay.
getting pretty hip there, which like the city of Spokane Valley is really old school and really boring. They're trying to step it up, but they're not. So actually, City of Coeur d'Alene is awesome with what they allow you to do.
Downtown core, you've got the floor area.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Okay, so I'll give you an example of what Joel brought up, which was neighbors, or what you brought up was neighbors. Okay, I bought a piece of property that was about 2 acres, I mean, it's maybe about 1.5 acres. It was 3 parcels. So I creatively,
Tell me why you checked into that, though. You checked the legal description on that, so it was like a.
no, there was 3 parcels. There was 3 parcels within the triangle. So. This was the piece, and the piece was like weird, like this or something. So there was 3 parcels, or was that 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it was this. Okay, whatever. It was close enough. It was something like that. When I bought it, there was a house here, and so what I did. Crazy lady.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Don't name names, sure, watch this.
Yeah. So anyways, I bought this whole piece of property. okay? And so I was thinking, the first thing I'm gonna do is lot line adjust it. So then I went house, and then I went immediately, and I went lot. So then this was all, so I could sell it, as soon as I lot line adjusted this, I could sell it because it was on its own parcel. I could have technically sold this, but I turned it into lots. And then, so this whole process was a lot line adjustment. And then what I was going to do a short plat on was all this stuff in here. So then I did a short plat of, I mean, it ended up looking like that. And so then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, it was actually, this was one lot, and this was a lot, and then the rest were lots as well. This was my short plat. These three, and those three. So it was a creative one to where anything 10 lots or over is a long plat. Well, this was actually a short plat because I already had 3 lots built in. So my only real parcel or plat that I did was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I could still be within those guidelines.
This is a current project.
Current project. So to speak to your like, do neighbors get mad? Would you be mad? You're probably a mad neighbor, right? If somebody were to come do that.
Yeah.
If you had your 10 acres of land right here, and you had your horses and all that right here, and I come in, or a developer comes in and does this because they can, you're not going to be very friendly, which brings me over to here. So
Would
she is raw.
offer pony rides.
That's great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you do want to get in decent with your neighbors, and then that's backing up to even, 30 minutes ago question. But yeah, I mean, if you can get in good with these neighbors and do something that they're going to like, that's the way I do it. Like, or they're happy with. I'll talk to them. She and these people across the street, every single day that I was building this house and this house, would call L&I on my contractors when they were building this house. I'm not kidding you. 1 to 4 times a day, they labor and industries, because a roofer or a framer didn't have his belt on.
I'm not wearing a hard
Not wearing a
hat.
hard hat, or
Or
they were cussing. And my builder got fined $5,000, for it. I didn't get charged that thing.
or paint on their cars. What about
Paint
the
on their
cars?
cars. So, that was the only valid thing that they should have called on. Drywall. It was drywall.
Drywall
It's
does, yeah.
Is this the one over here?
No, it's out in the Valley meets the South Hill area, 6,000 block of 12.
Currently 3 on the market, so feel free to.
But so anyways, neighbors will get mad, and she's horrible, and she's horrible, and he's horrible. So sometimes you're gonna have those. You just gotta deal with them, and I did.
Nobody likes change.
Huh?
Nobody likes change.
He buried us.
Buried them.
Yeah, you're way too nice.
Yeah.
All the time.
Where's it at? What's the train station?
Yeah, the train
So, but this project looked really good. They just weren't used to neighbors there for,
100 years, yeah.
a long time. So that was an example. This is going to be an example of a question marky profit one too, by the way, because of timing.
So, question for you. What kind of time do you save on the boundary line adjustment versus short plotting that? Or going to the,
I just boundary lined this one because it probably took me 3 months to be able to, I paid like I think I paid $315 for this house, okay? And I boundary line adjusted for probably $800 or whatever it was. So then I could
sell it quickly, so you can sell it.
Yeah, so then I could immediately sell this house and not owe anything. So I think we sold this house for what, $315 or something?
$330, I think.
Okay, $330. So I was actually in the positive.
You put money into it.
I put money into it. Yeah, I put $70,000 in this house. So I'm at $385. And then minus, say we sold for $330. I only owed $55,000 on the rest of that.
Yeah, so if you do your 55K divided by 9, I mean, you do from your original equation,
Plus the development cost of it.
but your raw dirt price
Amazing.
is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so that seems like
Then you start building at the wrong time though, and then your budget goes from $300,000 to $390,000,
Right.
and it's like, well,
yeah, that chews up profit.
choose a profit, and that's a risk. That's a risk. So now I'm like, do I rent these? Do I make a lot less than I thought I was going to make on them? Or so then you just pivot.
We're Which is crazy to think that you could be into those lots for, call it, yeah, $9,000, and you could still be, that's still a chance for a loss.
The $9,000 was probably 55 to 60 with the cost to develop though.
Well, right, but it still costs it all. I'm just going off your raw dirt from earlier.
Yeah, that's 30 or 20 now.
Yeah.
Raw dirt.
Yeah.
So that's what I got on that. Ty had questions. Ty, do you just want me to read through these?
Thank you.
Well, did we hear about Ty's bad situation?
I was gonna go through it.
We want to hear about Ty's nightmares.
Yeah, to explain a little bit more. Like, you want to go find your developer and get their relists or get their listings, or what do you mean? Because
I didn't know what direction your presentation was going to go, so I was asking you a question. But if you, as a realtor, if you're going to help out developers find land,
Yep.
you've kind of gone through the process on how you would.
Yep.
How might you seek out developers that say, hey, I can go help you find land?
So,
If you weren't going to develop for yourself.
believe it or not, a lot of these guys, Viking Homes, Hayden Homes. Hayden Homes guy called me the other day from Bend, Oregon, or wherever they're at, and he's like, "Hey, I saw you're developing a piece of land." I'd say if you can just build relationships, if you could pick 10 builders, small, big, whatever, in Spokane or Coeur d'Alene that you would like to work with, and go set up a meeting with them and say, "Hey, I would like to go find you a piece of land. Do you work with, agents on the relist of it?" Because that's what you were trying to do. Him and I tried to do it quite a bit in the past, and it's doable. And I think a lot of the local builders are super loyal. And well, if you went called Viking Homes and said, "Hey, I got a 5-acre piece of land. Would you be interested in it? And can I get the list backs?" I'm sure they're going to say, "Yeah." Don't you think, Todd? I mean, they're pretty loyal people, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Same thing. What?
To a point.
Yeah, to a point.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, depends on the day. But in general, most of these, even a Greenstone, like, I'd say they're pretty loyal and just say, "Hey, I found this piece of property. Would you be willing to consider me renting it or listing it back for you?" And I think a lot of these guys are saying yes.
And two cents. But a developer usually, at least what I have found, they're usually not a very good client because they're trying to do what you're doing. So usually going to the builder themselves, at least, has been a lot more of a friendly call because the developer, you're kind of almost doing the same thing as what they're doing. So
If I were doing it.
if you're correct, yeah.
I would just say it's getting a lot tougher.
Yeah, and I would, again, I think Zach's got, in my opinion, but same thing. You go right to the builder who's like, "Yeah, we're going to buy these things on the back end. We know all how to connect these dots in between if we need to," versus someone else who's developing is kind of almost doing that same type of thing. And there's some big developers. I mean, Tom Anderl is a good example. Like, develops 100-acre properties to be hundreds or thousands of lots in the prairie, and he's out there doing the same thing Zach is, knocking on the doors, trying to get that. So, and I mean, even he would be somebody you could certainly talk to, but most of that, he's kind of already delved into. But the builder side is really where I found to be open ears.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So are you guys, like, when you guys came to this today, are you guys coming to this as like your own person? Like, gosh, I kind of want to go get myself a piece of one of these by myself. Or are you looking like for a client? Yeah, more so for clients. I mean, Lincoln, is this like something you want to go do? Or are you just like, obviously bringing knowledge for a client, but I think that's the question for, what with you, like, you're doing this yourself, right?
Yeah, but
you want
maybe
clients
other ones too
to go do it.
Like, it's not for me, but it might be for somebody else.
Yeah.
I think I have a lot to learn before I would jump in my personal self.
Yeah.
And to have the confidence to talk and actually help somebody else. I probably want to help myself first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Before I would go help somebody, if I'm going to go out and find a builder, I'd do it myself.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like financing is not that hard to find.
Going to that, okay.
But I don't know much about it. So I'm learning.
If I'm a you, or if I'm a Ty, or if I'm a whoever, Andreas or Kyler or whoever, who I think the best case for everybody right now, and I told Michaela this: go find one lot and go build one duplex on it or one house on it or whatever, and turn it into a rental. You're going to learn so much within that that 9 months. Number one, you find the lot. Chances are it's already going to have the utilities and everything to it already. It would be really good if you could divide it into two because you're getting a better deal on it. But for the process and the understanding and education of it, buy a lot and just put a house on it. Like, you're a great example for it.
I have one. But I got to do it.
But you got to do it.
Yep. Which I'm ready to do
So
it.
you need private money. Or,
Well, I'm prepared for
Yep.
that, but the
Yep.
next steps.
Yep.
The next steps are, but I have to use my resources.
you have to use your resources. And you got the background for it, your dad, I know he's built those awesome condos over by Post Falls, so.
Yeah, just gotta use my resources. Financially, gotta be prepared for that, which I am ready to go.
Interest rates, I mean, didn't even really want to talk about them, but it is really tough to make anything pencil right now. If you're going from buying land to build these buildings to renting them out, it's just tough. So if you're gonna go that route, be looking forward, 15, 20 years when you're still hoping that these are paid down, but you're not gonna be making your 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, $700 a month off of each rental, unless maybe it's a duplex, because the interest rates are tough right now. It's just the presentation you guys had last couple weeks ago. So,
How easy is it to, if there's an easement through your land on the side for the city, but it's pretty useless in my personal opinion?
okay,
How
so
easy is it to snag that?
is this
And
a
it's
lot?
like it's like 3 feet.
Right there, that's the easement?
Correct.
So
Like
sometimes,
nothing.
that project that I just told you guys about, I had the same, this was actually, so this was my project. This was dirt. This was to the east, let's see, this was my east property line. And this was supposed to be a future road from here, right? No one's ever putting a road down. So I actually got the city of Spokane Valley, and there was one here too, to vacate my half of the road. I actually ended up gaining like 15 feet, or however wide a road is, 10 feet, because of vacate. So, so I ended up getting all this land in here. So for your easement, what's the easement?
I haven't dug into it. I'm scared to do it, but that's my next step.
Dig into your easement.
I know. I'm scared to dig into it because I don't
But
really
if
want to
it's
find
only
out.
3 feet, it shouldn't be too bad.
No, there's a church behind it, and there's a road in front, there's a house on both sides.
It's probably a big sewer line or a big water line or
So
something.
they should be able to.
Yeah.
Or you make it part of the backyard and it's not gonna have an impact either way.
But if I can provide them because it's all I would need to make a 2-car attached garage, I need that for the amount of feet required for a 2-car attached 3-by-2 bath rancher. I need that. Or I have to do a single garage, which is all over that neighborhood, and I'm now realizing why.
Or,
Lots are too small.
and you know what, that's not a really bad thing, Worst case scenario, you do a tandem garage, right?
No, that's what I was saying. But I was wondering how hard is it? I mean, it's what, 7-8 grand, I think, in the research I've done to get these.
Probably. So are you trying to tell me what this is
Just broad road.
already an easement? This is already an easement?
What you have scribbled as an easement, correct.
And you're just trying to get rid of it?
I want it. I
Oh,
need the
you
extra
want this
3
easement.
feet
Gotcha.
so I can
You want
build a
the 3
2-car garage
Yeah, find out what the easement is and.
in the city.
But if it's a gas line, you're doing like.
Yeah, if it's a gas line, it's tough. If it's
gas
sewer
line,
water, you don't
right.
wanna mess with it. Save your money, and save your even maybe 7-8 grand.
Do a
And
tandem.
don't do a 2-car garage, do a tandem. Or a lot of people right now are doing, how wide's that 2-car garage?
I don't know, I have to measure. So I own the house next to the lot as well, and I gotta subdivide it off.
Okay.
So I'm already prepared. to
Could
subdivide.
you move this lot line 3 feet and pick up your 3 feet over here?
Great idea. Look at that.
Maybe, if I got a
I don't
bulldozer
know.
garage,
You're a genius
So,
there.
yeah.
which I'm prepared to bulldoze
Yeah, so maybe you could pick up your 3 feet right here.
on the other side.
Yeah, and not even have to pay your 7 or 8 grand there. And
why
if,
it's
worst case
standard.
scenario, they say no, you have a tandem garage, or a lot of people are doing the, 16-foot wide garages with a 14-foot door, and it still feels like a 2-car garage. It still looks like a 2-car garage, or whatever the dimensions are, So it's not your standard 20, maybe it's a 16 with a big garage door that only has a foot, and it's a 14-foot garage door. And yeah, you can get a golf cart and your car in there, but you can't get 2 cars.
So if it's a sewer easement, I'm good. If it's a power easement, I'm not good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, every entity is a little different, and every person that you work with at every entity is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what it is. Find out, and let me know what it is when you find out.
I know, I need to. I get scared to find out, honestly.
What are you waiting for though? Make the call and find out, and then pivot if you got to pivot.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario is you're doing a single car garage. or a smaller garage,
That's what I thought when I bought it.
which isn't a big deal.
Makes that one.
So I was helping a client that was buying a piece of land and they were gonna
saw
develop it. They did all their diligence, like so on point. They worked for an architecture firm, like they knew what they were doing. And they asked all the right questions. And then when it came down to now you're closed on the property and now it's months later. And then someone else comes in, I don't know if it was like fire department or something else, and it's like, oh yeah, well you can't do that because the fire department won't let you, and it's like, those are the things that get me tripped up, like how do you know all the things you're supposed to be asking? It's like you don't know what you don't know, but you think you've done it, checked every box, and then now that really affected that piece of land, and if they wouldn't have passed that new, or what, I don't know what you call it, rule, policy that you could do duplexes, or, turn a single family into, they would have just, their whole plan would have been, they probably would have been calling me really pissed if that thing hadn't happened.
If you represent those clients, you have to over disclose, even in the email. You need to do all the research. I will get you the phone numbers and stuff, but you need to do the research. The biggest thing is, I think, is that 2-week pre-application meeting with the valley.
Yeah,
You will get most of the questions answered, but if it becomes a fire department issue, a lot of those guys will work with you. You just have to get creative.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I just felt bad for him. It's like, then I feel bad, and then the whole thing feels like
over disclosure,
a shit show.
you need to do your research
Yeah.
on this, and if I can help get you, contacts, I will.
But you don't think that that's a thing where you go, no, you know what, you need to talk to my buddy Zach and let him represent you because he understands this better. Like, do you feel
No, I'll
that
just
you
talk
should
to
take
him.
yourself out of that? No.
Yeah, a little bit. I'd take yourself out of it a little bit.
Meaning, and recommend another
No,
agent.
you write it up, write the deal.
Yeah.
State,
No,
you need to
You're
do the
there to
research.
do the
I've done
content
it.
versus
Yeah.
paperwork. You're not there to find out the information for them.
I know, it just feels
Same with the
so,
home inspector. You're not there to point stuff out. I mean, the home inspector
I
can
know.
find that same.
I know.
You can't feel
It still
bad.
feels bad though.
Yeah.
You probably got a big deal on it, or a good deal on it.
And he does it, a lot of people don't take it to that level. You do have a chance, and that's why you need the 4 weeks to actually get in front of a planner.
Yeah.
So if you can get in front of the planner, and they usually charge a couple $100 to do that because they spend 3 or 4 hours
Yeah.
looking through the questions. And a lot of times they will raise up like, this one you're gonna have to talk to the fire department. So there's a lot uncovered there, and I'd almost venture to guess they probably didn't go through that process because a lot of people don't. They don't even know you can do it, or they don't think you can do it in time. And you usually have to file right away because most of them it's a 3-week wait to sit down with the planner. But that's kind of exactly what they're doing is like, and those are still like, you get the fire department, they're like, well, I told you to talk to them. You couldn't get a hold of the fire department in 30 days. And 3 weeks after your due diligence was over, the fire department throws in some things, and that's when you have to kick into gear on the, let's get creative, let's work at this out.
Yeah,
Most of them will work with you.
okay.
There's a way you're
I
gonna get
just-
around it. But you gotta look worst case. I think Kyle maybe talk about his situation a little bit.
And then spinning off your brother's question, do you guys have, and I was asking Joel this morning, like a list back agreement that you guys have used in the past? So let's just say you are working and you're developing and you're like, I'm not gonna, maybe it's just a net deal, you're not talking commissions, and it's obviously, maybe it's your land or somebody else's land. Do you have some sort of list back agreement that you use?
I control my whole
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
But if you went to, you two went to Architera and
Yeah, here's something.
relationship. A lot of this is relationship based, right? Like,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you would feel good about it. Would I ever go get a list back? I wouldn't. Should you feel like you would need to with some people? Probably. But those list backs, really the list back you're trying to go for in a year or a year and a half. They could just kick you to the curb within that year and a half. So I personally would never do list backs, but I'm a handshake guy.
Yeah.
So
And he owns his own stuff, he's
Yeah,
controlling, he's signing his own
you're in
listings.
control, yeah.
Todd probably has one. Where's Todd? Did he leave? Oh, you don't use them, okay. But we
Mine was
have,
off the handshake, Jeff, which I probably
It's not
won't
worth
get.
the paper it's written on.
Say what?
Mine was off the
Relationship
handshake,
is
I probably won't get.
Yeah, those are
That's the whole
tough.
point.
But you didn't waive your commission on
No.
them.
but in our old
At
boss
least you got yourself covered on front.
used to actually, they got so locked down where he would, because his whole livelihood was based on it, Mark Johnson, they would file a lien against every one of the
That's so
lots.
smart.
Which is, then that, it's got teeth, like, I'm not signing, you just have to convince me to sign off. I'm not signing off if it's another agent listing. So I mean, it can be those extremes, a handshake or down to
Yeah.
signing lien releases on every lot.
I just learned in the last, just very recently, that the handshake things are awesome, but like, there's a lot of people in these bigger companies like DR, even Arcatera, who's not that big, but they change, people come and go.
Yeah, the person you shook the hand of, they're gone.
They're
Yeah.
gone. They're over at Ryan Homes now.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not at Arcatera. And they're like, well, hey, I shook your hand. And it's like, well, shit, man. You know, it's just a
Yeah.
weird little
Yeah.
space where a year makes a big difference.
It does.
And their intention was totally pure and good, but it's hard to go back, and it just feels weird and kind of gross. And
Yeah.
that's probably why I don't do it.
How do you know if land can be developed? I think I kind of went over that. I mean,
Study.
water, sewer, garbage, look at the properties, the flat or the hilly, whatever. So, do you want to dig any deeper into that? Okay. What type of land development is out there? You mean like condos, houses, duplexes? I'd say anything your imagination can think of is available, especially like downtown Seattle. I mean, you could do whatever, I think, really. What departments, entities should an agent buyer be aware of? First call, and I have some of these connections like at the Valley and even the Cody County fairly decently, but if you do a pre-application meeting, it's gonna check that box off, number 4. What departments, entities should a buyer agent be aware of?
I was thinking like, who you should advise your buyers to engage with the pre-plan meeting. is
Pre-plan
the way to
meeting
go.
should cover it all.
Who do you call for the pre-plan meeting?
City of Spokane Valley, 921-1000. Marty, yeah. But they have to respond to you within a certain time frame. If you formally give them your $250 and your 2 pieces of paper, it literally takes you 5 minutes to fill it out. Same with any county or city. They have to respond to you.
And one little thing, but physically walking in there
Yeah.
is a lot of times a good way to do it. Because in the city, there's just not the same accountability on like, oh yeah, I meant to get back to you. And like 10 days go by and now you're out of your due diligence when you needed that meeting. So I think that physically going into a place is good. And most of them have planners on duty. You could talk to right then. They're not going to give you the whole shebang, but you can fill out a pre-app meeting right there.
Yep.
And those things for $200, $300 are well worth it, in my opinion.
Are there any big mistakes to be avoided?
Oh, here's ties.
His tires.
Let's hear
Okay, so I'll
ties.
give you the general of ties. Ty bought in R2 zoning, which allows for a minimum of 10,000 square feet per single family house. He bought this really nice piece that if you were looking down on it, had a really cool house, has a really cool house on it. In that if you were looking down on it, could easily get 3 more lots on it, being you could have a total of 4 houses. So looking into it, okay, you buy it for 600 grand, the house is worth 500 grand, you're into each other lot for 33 grand, kind of like one of the first little drawings I did. So sounds great. And all you got to do is go into the road and bring in sewer, water, power's nearby. Really sounds like a good project. And so you're into each lot, let's just say you're into each undeveloped lot for 60 grand. Sounds awesome. Until the neighbors get involved and tell you that, hey, due to a rule in 1942 on the CC&Rs, you can't do this. So he had to go through these multiple hearings. Long story short, he was trying to work with the neighbors and get it down to 1 house plus 2 lots. It met all the width rules, it met all the depth rules, it was creative, but it worked. It was exactly what they said you could do on paper. And then there was one other rule basically bringing it down to where
The hearing examiner,
overruled.
yeah, he went against the city, so
Yeah.
he ended up going out and doing his own research, which they should do. But he found a 1942 city ordinance that was ambiguous on the language of depth.
Oh.
And so it could be fought for or against me. And I just threw in the towel. I wasn't going to wait another 18 months and spend another.
Like the depth maybe is supposed to be like this, and his depth went like this and this, but he still had his 130 feet. It just wasn't 130 feet this way.
Yeah.
So they got him on it. And so now
And I could push it. It's not worth.
you
another
can
18
spend
months.
$20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on attorneys, and it's probably not worth it.
Was that a rezone you were going for?
He was just doing R2 zoning, trying to get all 10,000 square feet lots.
And why did it go to a hearing examiner in the first place?
Because you have to send out notice of application to your surrounding neighbors.
So they have neighbors like Sam.
They had CCNRs. Sam built it along with 64 others.
66ers.
Well, originally it was one, and then on the next
She got,
one,
yeah.
she recruited a bunch.
Where is this
And
at?
8 of the people actually didn't. even live in the
University in
development.
37.
Oh my
Just her friends.
So,
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that you went and looked at probably 60 of those 66 houses, none of them follow the original CCNRs. Like, they're all pulled up towards the road, they're not 40 feet back like they are, so,
Out of the 290%.
Yeah, we should have sent letters
so,
highlighting what they're breaking.
long story short, his project's probably not gonna do what he thought it was going to do. It was a learning experience, which is fine. So how do you, I think one of his questions was, how do you figure that out? I would have bought the property. I mean, I would have bought the property if it was an option to buy it. And because I would have felt so good about like, okay, worst case, I can get 3 lots in here. 2 lots is gonna break you even or make you $10,000 or whatever, not worth the hassle.
I also knocked down a $70,000 garage.
Yeah, you knocked down 7,000. That's another thing I've learned. I'm a clean freak. I like how everything looks nice. I want everything to look nice. I always originally wanted to knock the trees down, knock the shops down, knock everything down to have this place looking great. It's horrible. It's not a good idea to do. So I would wait until you have to knock it down, which is what we just did over on a project over here. We waited till the last minute, knocked all the trees down last, knocked the shop down last.
Do you have to disclose now that information when you try to sell it, or can you just shush and sell it?
Don't need
Next
to.
guy.
He's selling the house. He's not selling the land. He's just selling the house. So he doesn't have to disclose anything.
And even so, it's already in the CCNRs.
Yeah.
So you don't have to disclose, you don't have to say a word, you can list that property
It's in
and
the
find the next guy who makes the mistake and doesn't read the CCNRs back in 19, whatever.
And
Go ahead, yeah.
how is the hearing examiner? He's not an enforcer for the CCNRs. They have to sue you to enforce CCNRs.
So nobody sued me. They appealed the city's decision, and the city's decision was overruled.
By the hearing examiner based on the CCNRs?
We're gonna
Based
find
on
this
the-
guy.
Or the 42?
1942
So he essentially found a reason to shoot you down.
He introduced new information into
Gotcha.
what wasn't there.
So the CCNRs technically weren't. He found another thing. They got all riled up because they were
Found
like,
that
look
they were
right here.
ambiguous.
Yeah.
These CCNRs were so bad.
Yeah.
Like, if you brought those to real life now, nobody would be very happy with what's
8,000 cubic square feet for the first floor. I guess, yeah. But
Yeah.
9-foot ceilings, it's better than 8. But yeah, and I mean, I guess on that note, it's maybe going into it with having a different or multiple exit strategies.
I know.
Yeah.
Was that your first development? Like,
Kind of. I have another one that's equally as exciting.
His other one's gonna be fine. It's just his cost probably went up over $150,000 of what he thought it was going to be. Now, that bid is, I did the same thing. I could go over.
I did the same thing.
She did the same thing.
I
You
feel
know,
like this
and
happened
so,
to me once.
I don't know. I mean,
And it'll-
there's no real way of getting around Ty's deal unless you spent a year with it tied up and he went through the whole process, or 6 months of the whole process of going through these, which, I mean, you've had it for a year, so
yeah, and
you'd have to tie it up for a year, do feasibility for a year, which nobody's gonna sell. So you have to take these risks sometimes.
and it's been rented out.
Yeah, so it's
I rented out
he
shops.
bought it fine. He's got rid of a $70,000 shop.
I paid $7,000 to get rid of that.
Okay.
Nice.
So anyways, that's a Ty story. What would normal due diligence period be? In terms of normal due diligence period for a buyer, I mean, the minimum is 3 weeks. I don't
And that's
know,
all
I mean,
for
but
the-
some people, if there's 4 offers on it, it's like, you just gotta take it and hope that it works out. So,
Are you usually okay with 30 days? Where do you feel comfortable?
I'm comfortable with 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Because you can get the meeting
Because I
He has
get the meeting set up.
relationships.
But I'm sending that pre-app in
as soon as you have the PSS.
that day, even if I don't have it set up.
It might be an extra week.
Then I would roll the dice, but I'm analyzing and talking to all these entities, hey, is this gonna look okay, or? I
So
mean,
you'll do the pre-application before you even know if you got the deal? Like you'll just.
it takes 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I usually will make calls,
Well, you know people.
but it's still, like Joel said, you can go down there, you get 95% of your questions answered. The only people you're not gonna get questions or answered from is probably the fire department, because they're not in-house. Everybody else, pretty
Yeah,
quick.
and you can call even the city engineers, Chad Riggs and those guys.
Yes.
You
Chad
can
will have an
bring them
email
up.
to you if you email him at 1, he'll have an email to you back at 1:05. That's how good he is. And most of those guys actually are getting pretty good down there. What makes a land development? We talked about that. Good deal. What are some land costs associated? We went over that. How long does a subdivision take? I think we went over that. How does price per square foot get figured out? Cost versus sales price. Do you mean for an actual, like a house or something?
Yeah, like, if you're buying a price per square foot, there's just the difference between someone's, like you're building at a price per square foot and then you're buying the home at a price per square foot, and those are different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to go in price per square foot,
That goes more into the business.
let me just go into that a little bit. I've fully given up on ballparking numbers. I will actually be patient and take the time to get numbers for like a house or a duplex or whatever it might be. So I've actually learned to become a little patient, although I hate it. Contacts, okay. What I've talked about before, funding. Local banks, 1,000%. Regardless of whether you're buying a lot or you're buying 200 acres or you're doing a house, whatever, you got to get in touch with the local bank. That doesn't send their deals to Florida or Texas or wherever. You want the money local, and you want to be able to go into these places, be able to communicate with the person. Usually you'd have to do them conventional. We talked about or private money. I mean, this is just, you got to ask. Contacts, I'd have, contractors in your pocket. I mean, if somebody doesn't have a contact with a contractor, chances are somebody in this room will have a contact for a contractor or 2 or 3. Surveyors, same there. It's always good to have these guys in your back pocket. Same thing with the city of Spokane, Port Lane, Post Falls, good contacts. I've got them, people in this room have them, same with engineers and architects.
And maybe,
Back?
I think that's a great thing, because sometimes all this stuff's intimidating, and a lot of it lives in Zach's head, and you can pick up the phone and he's going to tell you. But like people that are more like, I don't know, this just smells like a development. There are engineers that kind of specialize in that. I'll say Whipple Engineering if you're, like in Spokane Valley and stuff. So now it takes a little longer. But you can kind of offload it to a professional where you're not like, well, I guess I'm giving this my stamp of endorsement. They're dealing with development things. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it's more time, but there are engineer companies that take it right from start to finish. For people that go, there's a lot of, again, a big building company, some of them they'll just subcontract for that whole process.
They'll do the pre-app for you too.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for free. You pay the money, they'll do, if they think they have a shot with working with you, they'll just draw it up, and they can draw that stuff up in, half hour. Yeah, rough. Yeah. I mean, it's on whatever PDF or whatever. It's not hand done. That's what I'm trying to say. How do I start? Knock on doors, watch the MLS every single day. I literally look at the MLS every day and look at every single, in Flex and in Paragon, I look at every single place that comes up every day. And if I miss it sometimes for 3 days, there's 150 listings to look at. I look at them all. White pages, again, for communication, trying to get a hold of a neighbor if you find, a piece. Current clients, maybe I've had a couple of those actually that would you just want to buy it in the past? Research and run spreadsheets. Again, so I have to start with 2 lots, Lincoln, and so we could mail out this or email out this presentation, but these are all links that I have on my hot sheet on my computer. I can click on them in 2 minutes. I can have a backyard measured within 1 minute of giving me an address. But having all these in general, this is why if you guys don't have the Washington State LLC finder, the Idaho Secretary of State, or the sewer line link for Spokane, I think Coeur d'Alene has it too. Those are all really good ones to have to get answers quick. That are a pain if you don't have a direct link into them. That's even for just a client asking questions. And then if you guys ever wanted me to do a building or whatever, house building one, or how do I go from finished land lots to ending of construction on a new build, I can do that too. That's what I got. Any questions?
Great job. A two-person ovation.
Good job, Z.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice
Need
job.
to work on my presentations a little bit, but
That's great.
you're so nervous always talking in front of people, but you get flowing and stuff, and it's fun, and that's why I always like to keep it, questions and stuff, so thanks for working with me.
Hey, I've got a question, next question. So if you have a client or a colleague that you're talking to about investing now, what,
Investing in what?
in just an investment property, whether it be single or a duplex or a big project or whatever it is, would you encourage them to do so, and why?
That could kind of maybe date back to that class, but I think, a couple of weeks ago, did you put that class on? Or was that Red Rock?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
You got
Patrick and Joel.
I would think that would go more into that in terms of running the true numbers, but depends upon the situation, it depends upon the buyer situation, and can the buyer maybe get the number down a little bit, and again, these interest rates right now, a lot of them are at break even, so if you go buy a $700,000 duplex in Coeur d'Alene, you break even on that thing and be willing to either refinance it in August whenever the rates drop a whole point, which maybe, or whatever they're maybe going to do, then yeah, maybe, probably. And again, appreciation, right? Anything in Coeur d'Alene or Spokane over the next, look at what I told you. That property that Joel and I bought was $215,000. The first one I ever told you about, that one on Adams and 24th. That property 13 years later is probably worth, I'm going to say $450,000 to $500,000 right now, or something like that, right? And so if you can look way forward of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, which I think is a lot of people's game plans and mindset in real estate, then yeah, I'd say buy it.
And I think
What else
if you can
put your money in?
Yeah, well, and that's right too. The stock market, people are losing money. So even if they can, if on today's numbers, you might lose a little bit in cash flow. I just had an hour-long conversation with a client yesterday, and so we ran through the numbers, and I printed them out, the spreadsheet, and we have that. I think that's what Patrick and I went over, even did our cash on cash. It's all built into the spreadsheet, and it's here. We'll send it to you. All you do is punch all this stuff in. Most of it auto-populates. You have to run the payment, and then it'll kick that out. But if you can get in at a very slight loss, A, they're making an investment, B, they're picking up some tax incentives, and C, then in the long term, a year and a half later, once you crank up rents and do some of these things, and then maybe, hopefully you get to refinance, it can really be a cash cow. But today you were able to buy it and get a nice property and be able to negotiate it down. Right. But you had to take, like yesterday, we were looking at this, $103 a month was the loss. But then I punched it in, I said, okay, it's $103 a month loss. If you can raise rents, because they're renting it for $890, and we think you should be able to put people in at $1,400 aside on this duplex, and it turns into a $790 or $780 positive cash flow after you do that. So it's a little bit of that delayed gratification.
Okay.
And two, like what he did, like I think probably people have, there is a little plus to when, hey, we have people looking at investment. Hey, if there's a couple things to look at, especially there's a lot of duplexes sitting around right now, you look at something that's on a little bit bigger lot. And it's just for the whole idea that, I don't know, maybe, Liz and I looked at one last week, and it was like, this is on a big old lot on the corner of 23rd and University. You could split this off someday. You might not. We're not going to put a lot of value there, but that's a nice kicker, and it makes you feel a lot better about losing $120 a month today, because now, well, I got this future lot. I raise rents. I make $600 a month. Like, okay, I'm starting to feel good about this. Anyway, not to get too deep.
Especially if they have cash.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Or if they have cash right now, let's say they have $600,000 cash, I'd be going and buying $1.2 million worth of property, whatever the numbers are, dividing it down the middle. Those are going to cash flow at that point, pretty decent. So.
Oh, so we can look at finance, something bigger.
It's no bigger, more than 6.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.